very bold and shameless and very non-institutionalized and not politically correct, which is very much Tantra, then it touches everything and it stands out because other traditions have a little bit more of a politically correct something. Let's also create a harmonious society. Let's put that as a sin or put that in a box. An erotic act. The main misunderstanding that people have about Tantra and why it stands out so much, because people say, well, but Tantra really touches hands-on erotic techniques. And they say, well, therefore Tantra is the science of Eros. It says, no, Tantra is the science of everything. Tantra has techniques, what to do when you're sad, what to do when you're angry, what to do when you're hungry, what to do when you can't remember something. There is a whole tantric technique in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. When you can't remember something, there is a particular silence in your mind. Forget about what you're trying to remember and look at the silence. Actually, you need to try to remember, but without remembering, and you stay in the silence. So Tantra deals with every aspect of life, and therefore also of the erotic part, hands-on, very clear. This is the position, this is how you do it for that long, you do it with those lights and so forth, and on that day of the moon, and with such a condition of heart and with such a transfiguration and so forth, and then yes. But Tantra is the science of everything. Whereas other spiritual traditions, they are the science of almost everything, but just that, no. It's ignored, it's forbidden. Yeah? So it stands out as a difference, because Tantra is willing to touch everything. There are even techniques when you go to the toilet. Tantra is willing to touch everything, and there are tantric masters who got enlightened in the toilet. There are descriptions. So Tantra is completely shameless, and it says, well, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. You have to quote Yogi Bhajan. So everything and everyone is divine. I mean, if there is a God, and we come from an assumption that there is, then He's everywhere and everything, also the bedroom, and also your food, your sadness, and your memory. So, because Tantra has this assumption and is very bold and shameless and very non-institutionalized and not politically correct, which is very much Tantra, then it touches everything and it stands out, because other traditions have a little bit more of a politically correct something. Let's also create a harmonious society. Let's put that as a sin or put that in a box, but definitely take God out of it, or at least not in this very wild and free way. So Tantra stands out. And from this reason, it appears as if the erotic side has a huge part in Tantra, whereas if you look at the scriptures, it's maybe 5%, maybe 3%. If you take the main 20 tantric scriptures, that's about as much as it touches there. Your part? Yes, but.
Go to our YouTube channel now and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like this video, give it a like. So what you're saying is... Yeah, no, of course, I agree. So you're saying Tantra, the tantric path, is filled with techniques to spiritualize anything in your life.
Absolutely.
Right? But then Tantra also says anything in your life is an act of unification between consciousness and energy. It is said in one of the tantrics, a real tantric always has his mind amongst beautiful women. What does that mean? It means to have this continuous unification of the consciousness with Shakti. And in this playful way, it's very interesting how it is presented, this having the mind amongst beautiful women. Now, it's not to get lost into all sorts of desires, but to stay in this courageous mergence that the Vira, the tantric hero, is continuously able to somehow face with a lot of courage. You could say that in the end of the day, as much as we might rise through various tantric techniques to a, let's say, spiritualized viewpoint in many, many different areas of our lives, in that process, all those areas of our lives will be eroticized, if you will. They will become juicy And very, very often the, let's say, comparison that Tantra brings when you actually awaken to life is that you do become very turned on by life and by all its aspects, and by the sadness of it, and by that people don't like you, and that people criticize you, and that you do not feel good right now. All of that will be, you will learn to make love with that, to polarize that, to penetrate that with your consciousness, to be that continuous Shivaic presence that is able to contain the biggest ecstasy, the most cosmic orgasm, and in the same time, the greatest failure and the most awful, tormenting emotions, and being in hell and being in heaven, all becomes one thing for the Tantric. It all becomes this continuous interplay between consciousness and energy. And as, let's say, an example of this beautiful vision of life as an erotic celebration, I want to read you as a final moment a little extract from the Tantric Quest by Daniel Odier. Wonderful book, especially when you sit on this end of the couch. You can really get a beautiful direct account of how it looks like when somebody awakens in a tantric way to their spiritual nature, and how it makes them such a deeply erotic being. So in this book, Daniel Odier is talking in the first person, telling his account with his female master Devi. And they are now in the middle of the forest, living in some makeshift little huts, and she is initiating him. So I want to read you a little bit, and I invite you to listen in a tantric way, full of awareness, open, erotically open, letting the words and their meaning penetrate your being and fulfill your heart. Devi let me consider what she had said. When she paused, her whole body seemed suspended in space, in total well-being and calm openness. I sometimes had the impression that the sky and the trees listened to her, that the waterfall quieted down, that the air stopped moving. I loved the way she spoke about life, always coming back to reality and our struggle to survive, understand, love, search. Then Devi says, the first 5 tattvas, or elements, are earth, water, air, ether, fire. Devi rose, saluted space, and lay down on the ground. I imitated her, hands out in front of me, flat on the ground. The first tattva is earth. With all my body I touch the earth. My hands touch the earth. My face touches the earth. My breasts touch the earth. My heart touches the earth. My belly and my genitals touch the earth. My thighs, my knees, and my toes touch the earth. I breathe deeply, and my breath is united with the earth. The whole earth breathes. Breath is everything. I delight in the earth, its presence, its energy. The earth is real. Only your superficial contact with the earth is not real. After a few minutes, Devi got up again and went down the narrow path that led to the river. Walking behind her, I admired the way both her feet made contact with the ground. In every movement of her body there was a grace and a presence that gave the impression of space opening to let her penetrate it. We arrived at the basin. Devi let her clothes fall and entered the water nude. She approached me. The water covered her shoulders. She faced me. The second tattva is water. I touched the water with my whole body. The water is real. Only your superficial contact with the water is not real. She immersed herself completely. I did the same, holding my breath as long as possible. When I came up, I was astonished to see that Devi was still underwater. I saw her body distorted by the water. I took another deep breath and plunged under again. I was conscious of the water going into my ears. I came up a second time and waited for Devi. Her face emerged, she opened her eyes, and I saw in them the playfulness of a young girl. She breathed in very deeply, slowly, then breathed out. Her hair was so black it looked almost blue. The third tattva is air. which enters my lungs, then nourished my body, my blood, and circulates through my entire body. The air is real. Only your superficial contact with the air is not real. Devi got out of the water and sat down on a big round rock facing the sun. Since she was naked, I chose another rock some distance away, but she motioned for me to take the spot in front of her. As I sat down, she said to me, "Tantrism is one long face-to-face. Nakedness is the nakedness of the conscious in which nothing is fixed. Everything flows there like a river. The Shaktis are nude because not a single concept can find where to attach itself in their consciousness any longer, though itself wouldn't know how to stay put there. The phallus of Shiva is erect because it is raised to full consciousness, and in full consciousness it penetrates the universe. The vulva of Shakti is open because in full consciousness she lets the entire universe penetrate her. Shiva and Shakti are indistinguishable. They are one. They are the universe."
Yes, so in conclusion, we can see that there is space for both ideas, and it is on one side true that indeed just some tantric masters had actual lovemakings, and just a small part of the tantric scriptures speak about explicit lovemaking techniques or erotic game techniques, but the entirety of Tantra is erotic, as Blandine mentioned, as this constant game of the observer or consciousness and the observed or manifestation, which is feminine, and that game, any act of perception when it's done consciously, is ecstatic and erotic.
The idea is that the woman is the expression of Shakti, and Shakti is the power of the universe. She is, by definition, the only thing that can be powerful. Of course, also a man carries power, and when he would be willing to do the effort and awaken fully the state of Shakti inside, which is very possible, then he would have access to that same power, because in the end of the day we are all androgynous beings. But for a woman it is naturally so that she carries power, and for a man it is naturally so that he would be more centered into consciousness, and therefore within this world be maybe tempted to acquire power because he doesn't have it naturally. So that trying to acquire a power that isn't yours by means that are not fitting, therefore violating Shakti, comes out as violence, and yes, is the most impotent thing you can do, is to be violent, because it cancels the beautiful game of polarity between a man's consciousness that is meant to polarize Shakti around. A man is not to be powerful by himself. He's meant to be conscious by himself, and therefore polarize power around him. Polarize women, woman, whatever the case might be, however large or your consciousness might be, around you. And from that derive this game of masculine and feminine.
Yes, it's a certain laziness of unity. The power of man comes by fusing with the one he loves, or with the Shakti that's love around, and in this way you gain power through fusion. And that power is not yours in an egoistic way. You are a part of that power. You and that power are one, and somehow through that unity the power will flow in the right way. And when a man says, "No, I want the power for myself to fulfill my selfish agenda," that's the essence of violence, and you don't penetrate Shakti with an erect lingam to fuse with her, but rather you try to abuse her, manipulate her, blackmail her, whatever, get her for your needs. A real man fuses with his beloved and somehow lets go, lets go of his own agenda, and therefore becoming together with her really powerful, but not for a selfish agenda, but just for the flow of life, for the glory of life.
Yeah. Also, to be understood, maybe that violence in this context can take a lot of different forms. Like, let's say that it's a spectrum as such. So it's not just violence against Shakti. It's not just when you raise the hand against someone and you hit them in the face. That would be horrible enough. But also, as Uriel said, just having an agenda around it, this is usually the detriment for most men on the spiritual path, is that they do have an agenda when it comes to Shakti, when it comes to life, when it comes to women, when it comes to money, when it comes to energy of any form. And as long as you do have an agenda, you do have a problem, because it will stand big, fat, nicely in the way of you and enlightenment. So observe very well as a man your relationship to Shakti. See where you are just in like wanting to dominate, where you are just wanting to suck her breast and get something out of her, get some pleasure, get some recognition, get some appreciation, get some little spark of what you were missing, from the past, or from your mom, or from other lovers, or from life itself. Where are you just trying to get something, whatever that might be? Yeah, also. But Shakti is everything. God in motion is Shakti. All power is Shakti. All energies are Shakti. No matter what energy you can think of, that is Shakti. The ego, absolutely. The ego is a very, very small function within our being, and can be very wonderfully diminished in its grip on our consciousness. If that is something that interests you, please come to our courses and retreats, because that's all we ever talk about. The whole path of Tantra is about, as you say, diminishing the ego. It's about moving from the ego to the soul. It is even in some of the old scriptures said that the tantric path only starts with the awakening of the soul. Only when the grip of the ego loosens up and we are freed into our soul can we actually start practicing Tantra. So there's a big significance of moving from the ego to the soul in order to become a proper Tantric adept. Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.